Big changes are potentially afoot to the UK's Foundation programme, specifically the way in which new doctors are selected and assigned to the jobs where they will be carrying out their first 2 years as doctors. Hello, my name's Ollie. I'm a junior doctor living and working in England as part of the NHS. I'm an FY2 doctor, and as ever, trying to keep you up to date with the most important medical goings on in the UK. If you want to stay abreast of this situation and others like it as they unfold, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. So as a very brief primer for the unfamiliar, in your final year of medical school, the way things work is this. You need to decide where in the UK you are going to go and work for your first 2 years as a doctor as part of what we call the Foundation programme, rotations in medicine and surgery that you've heard me talk about before. Unlike most other jobs in healthcare where you complete the qualifying degree, whatever it is, to work as a nurse, a paramedic, whatever you like, and then you apply for jobs and postings in the place and department where you would like to go and work, doctors instead go through a national assignment process where they are compared against each other using a national exam that everyone sits and another scoring measure that is usually drawn from their academic performance at medical school. Essentially how close you are to the top or the bottom of your particular class at your particular university. These two things together, this national exam and your performance through medical school, are combined together to spit out a score, and it is this score ultimately that is used to assign you to different hospitals around the country. So the person in the UK with the highest total score gets their first choice of jobs, then the person with the second highest score gets their first choice, and so on until all jobs have been filled. I've talked in much more detail about this previously in other videos, so be sure to go and watch some of those if you would like. But all of this could be about to change, as out for consultation at the moment is a pretty radical overhaul of the way in which this selection system works. And the long and short of it, as far as I understand the way that the press releases talk about it, is it would be moving towards a random computer-generated ranking system that would instead be used to assign people in a what's called preference-informed way that reflects people's choices more closely. Now, it's really important to note, as this video will be coming out on the 14th of February 2023, that the full details of how exactly this would work have not been released at this point in time. And there is actually a webinar tomorrow with the relevant people involved that will explain in more detail how this works, which I'll leave a link to in the description below, so be sure to go and watch that if you're interested. Therefore, everything that I'm about to say in the rest of this video are pure speculation. I don't know how things are going to change, but there is a reason why I'm releasing this video today, and some things that I want to talk about and get your thoughts on. My assumption or speculation as to how this is going to work, as I've said, is moving towards a system of pure preferencing or preference-informed allocation, meaning that you would rank your deaneries first, as we do already, these big geographic areas that separate the country into lots of little bits, going on to rank your individual posts in individual hospitals. And that's exactly the same as what we do right now. However, instead of using a score to allocate jobs, it seems to be a case purely of preferencing. So the person who puts a particular job as their number one preference would be more likely to get it than someone who puts that same job as their number 3 preference, for example. And this kind of approach has been shown by the BMA, and they did a really good webinar about how this all might work fairly recently, and again, linked in the description. But they've shown that this model would lead to an increased number of people getting a place that they would ultimately prefer. Or to put it another way, using this preference-informed allocation model leads to more people being happier, although not by a lot, according to the model, than the model that we currently use with the academic performance measured in deciles and the situational judgment test. In the event that two people were to prioritise and preference the exact same post, which is of course what we would expect in big urban centres where lots of people want to live, and in jobs that have particular specialties that would be appealing or are competitive, because all of that experience is valuable at the junior level. If that happens, what I'm assuming the computer has to do here is assign everyone a random number of some description that is used to break ties like this. Because without any other scoring metric that you're going to use, there's no real way to break those ties. Therefore, it's going to have to be done through some sort of random stochastic process like a lottery. And that's specifically why I wanted to get this video out today before the details become available to put a couple of conversation points to you all and hear what you think about this. And it's really important that we understand what you guys think, because this does not affect me in any way. I'm a qualified doctor. I've already been through the equivalent of this process, but it is important for any of you that are at medical school or are going to medical school or are thinking of going to medical school. This is your future. And ultimately what the question here comes down to is, would you rather a ranking system in which some kind of scoring metric is used to allocate people to their jobs in order of their preference, as we currently do, or would you rather it simply be preference-based with an element of randomness in the event that people tie on where they want to go, or capacity doesn't exist in an area to give all of the people who want jobs there? And I think there are two broad positions, right, that one can occupy on this. If we continue with the current scoring model using academic deciles and a national exam in the form of the SJT, this gives people some additional degree of control over where they go, as in there are modifiable factors that are engageable with by the individual so that they can exert some kind of effort or control over where they go and the broad trajectory of what they're going to be doing for the next 2 years. If you use an academic score, so something like deciles or a national ranking exam, something a bit like the USMLE, for example, where a score is the output and that's what's used to rank people, then you may argue that this encourages a meritocracy, which means that excellent performance or increasingly good performance is actively rewarded. It incentivizes people to work hard, study hard, and do well on their exams. And you could also consider something like bringing back additional points for degrees or publications or research or any of these other things that people have done. You are adding in scoring metrics that people can engage with in order to boost their score and therefore have a higher chance over going where they want to go. The problem with approaches like this, as people have very correctly raised, is that it selects against certain groups of people. For example, it selects against people who have additional responsibilities, perhaps in caring for people, who have to work alongside medical school in order to fund their studies, who have additional learning needs, or they belong to one of the many groups that we recognise are systemically failed by structural inequity and who we know will ultimately perform worse at medical school on standardised testing through no fault of their own, just as a flaw in terms of how our traditional measurement systems actually work. And we have to recognise, therefore, that if we continue with the current system that we use, then these same groups of people will continue to be failed by the systems that we currently use because we haven't changed anything. And not to mention that using academic performance particularly as a way to differentiate between medical students drives a lot of toxic competition behaviour that some medical schools are very well known for. And these two positions, as far as I've been able to think about it, are mutually exclusive. There is a real spectrum of thought on this, and when this was first announced, that was essentially what flooded all of the social media platforms. You have one group of people at one end of the spectrum on this who do think that academic performance and driving a meritocracy are the correct way to proceed and reward excellence, as happens in many other areas of society and in other degree programs, and that rewarding good exam performance ultimately leads to higher standards overall. On the other end of things, there are people who do not believe that these structures are healthy or appropriate at all, and the damage that they do in selecting against the disadvantaged groups that we've already talked about is not worth the ease almost that these systems generate. We like systems that use scores and metrics because they're easier to work with than more qualitative, holistic approaches to working out these problems. And I've really struggled with this. I can't see a world at the moment in which these two extreme positions can exist together. Now, obviously, most people don't occupy an extreme. They exist somewhere in the middle, probably close to the middle, if the law of averages is anything to go by. But because the two extreme positions aren't mutually compatible with each other, there will always be a given number of people that will be unhappy. So ultimately, I ask you what you think, medical students. What would you rather have? The system that we currently have, which to a degree rewards academic performance, albeit not as a huge piece of the puzzle. Would you use a standardised test of some description. We have the UKMLA coming in. That's not what it's designed to do, but would you accept that as a ranking exam, a national medical school finals exam, if that was an option? Do you think that all of these metrics are silly, unhelpful, not socially informed, and disadvantage particular groups? I mean, that's not debatable. Clearly the evidence says they do. But the question is, where do the priorities go? Because there is no system where everyone will get their first choice of jobs. That's not going to happen, especially as we have more and more medical students coming up through the system trying to fill an oversubscribed foundation program. So there has to be a system. The question is what do we do? Let me know down in the comments, guys. Thank you very much for watching. As always, be sure to hit that like button for me, leave a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.